The first sign of trouble came not with a bang, but with a silence that pressed down like a heavy, suffocating fog. For 5 minutes, the entire world held its breath. Across every city, every corner of Earth, the usual hum of everyday life disappeared. No cars. No chatter. No distant roar of airplanes. Then, without warning, a booming, inhuman voice tore through every communication device, shaking people to their core. It echoed from radios, televisions, phones, and digital billboards, each one amplifying the alien message. This is the Galactic Empire. Humanity is hereby declared a threat to the galactic order. Surrender now, or face extinction. Captain Elias Creed stared at the screen, his knuckles whitening around the armrest of his chair. His eyes were fixed on the broadcast, unblinking, though his mind raced with questions he couldn't yet answer. His military office, filled with the faint scent of coffee and old leather, felt colder than ever. Outside the windows of the command center, the once clear sky now carried a deep, ominous blackness, as if the sun had been smothered by an unseen force. Is it real? Adira Vale's voice broke through the thick silence, sharp with disbelief. She stood across from Elias, leaning against the control panel, arms crossed, her dark eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and fear. I don't know, Elias said, his voice steady despite the chaos roiling inside him. But we're about to find out. Adira shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. The sharpness in her expression betrayed her normally calm demeanor. The Empire? That's impossible. There's no way we didn't detect a fleet this size. Before Elias could respond, General Marek Volan's voice crackled through the room's communication system. His tone was blunt, the kind of voice that had given orders to thousands in battlefields across the globe. Captain Creed, we need you in the war room, now. The council is assembling. Elias nodded sharply, his gaze briefly meeting Adira's before he turned toward the exit. The moment the doors hissed shut behind him, the world outside became a blur of news channels scrambling for information, reporters rushing to the scene, and civilians pouring into the streets, their faces a mix of confusion and panic. The war room was quieter than Elias expected. A round table at the center of the room held Earth's most powerful leaders, their faces grim. The weight of the moment was suffocating. Any updates? Elias asked, taking his seat beside General Volan. None that makes sense, the general replied, his brow furrowed. The alien fleet arrived in the last half hour. At least 30 ships, each one larger than anything we've ever seen. A tall, stern-looking woman across the table spoke next. President Naomi Harris, leader of the Global Coalition. They're already beginning to deploy ground forces in some regions. We're receiving reports from around the world of strange, unidentifiable units attacking military bases and government structures. Elias clenched his fists. The plan had always been to be ready for something. But this was beyond anything they had anticipated. What do they want? Elias asked. Hard to say, Marek replied, adjusting his glasses. They haven't sent any more messages beyond the initial broadcast. It's like they're just watching us. Adira, who had entered the war room moments after Elias, stepped forward. Maybe that's the point. They're not just trying to conquer us, they're trying to make us submit, to make us believe they're invincible. Her voice wavered with both awe and bitterness. We've seen this before. A show of power to break us mentally before they strike. Elias stood and crossed the room, his mind working furiously. What if they're wrong? What if they don't know us as well as they think they do? He turned back to face them all, the tension palpable. This isn't about just technology or firepower. Humanity, we've always fought back with more than just strength. We fight with ingenuity, with resolve. If we've learned anything from our own history, it's that we never give up. And we'll use that against them. How? Naomi asked, the edge of skepticism in her voice. Adira looked at Elias, then at the rest of the leaders. We reverse engineer their technology, adapt it to our own. We've done impossible things before, and we'll do it again. General Volan's lips curled into a thin smile. You're right, Captain. We're not beaten yet. Not by a long shot. The lights flickered as the room descended into silence. Across the globe, cities buzzed with activity. Humans were preparing for a war they hadn't chosen, but would fight with every last ounce of their strength. The thought of surrender was unthinkable. Elias took a deep breath. The fight had begun. And he was ready. He turned to face the vast holographic map that illuminated the wall of the war room, the alien fleet looming ominously in space. The world's fate was in their hands now. But for the first time, Elias felt a fire inside him that he hadn't felt in years. Humanity might be outgunned, but it would never be outsmarted. And that, he thought, would be their strength. Elias paced the narrow confines of the command room, his boots clicking sharply against the metallic floor. The high-pitched whir of the ventilation system did nothing to quell the gnawing tension in the air. The initial shock of the Galactic Empire's declaration had worn off, but the gravity of the situation remained heavy. His mind churned with possibilities, none of them comforting. "I don't trust this silence," Adira's voice cut through the quiet. She stood at the control panel, her fingers brushing over the holographic interface as she scanned the latest reports from around the world. "They're not responding to any of our communications. It's like they've gone completely dark." "Maybe they're waiting for us to make the first move," Elias said, his eyes narrowing. He stopped pacing and leaned over the map projected on the table. The hologram flickered, showing Earth's continents divided into military zones, each marked with flashing red alerts. The alien ships, still hovering above the planet, appeared to be in a waiting pattern, their massive frames imposing against the backdrop of stars. "They want us to make the first mistake," General Volan spoke from across the room, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "These are not primitive invaders. They know what they're doing. If we strike first, it might give them the justification they need to wipe us out." Elias exhaled slowly. "Then we wait. But we can't do nothing. We need to understand their technology, their weaknesses." Adira stepped forward, her eyes scanning the map. "We're still working on that. But we might have a breakthrough. We intercepted a transmission that seems to be coming from one of their ships. It's encrypted, but our analysts are decoding it as we speak." "Good. Keep me updated," Elias ordered, his voice firm. The door to the room slid open, and a young analyst, Marcus, rushed in, his face pale with urgency. "Captain, you need to see this." Adira glanced at Elias, then followed Marcus to his station. The screen flickered as he typed furiously. An image came into focus, a schematic of one of the alien ships, showing intricate systems Elias could barely comprehend. But what caught his eye was a small anomaly, a weak point, marked in red. "This is from the decoded transmission?" Elias asked, leaning over Marcus's shoulder. "Yes, sir," Marcus confirmed, his voice tight. "It's an energy signature. It seems like a structural vulnerability in their main power source." "Is it reliable?" Elias asked, his pulse quickening. "It's our best lead so far," Marcus answered. "If we can exploit this, we might be able to disable their shields or even their weapon systems." Elias met Adira's gaze. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, but there was a glimmer of something in her eyes, a mixture of hope and cautious optimism. "I'm sending a team to investigate," Elias said decisively. "We'll need to be prepared for anything. If this works, we hit them hard and fast." The team assembled in a secure hangar, the cold metal floors echoing with the sound of footsteps. Elias stood with General Volan, Adira, and a group of elite soldiers, each of them equipped with advanced armor and weapons. The tension in the air was thick as the team prepared for their first mission into the unknown. "This is no regular infiltration," Elias muttered, as he adjusted his gloves, the weight of his armor feeling heavier than ever. "These are creatures that operate on a completely different scale. We don't know what we're walking into." "We'll be ready," Adira replied, her voice steady. "The key is to stay mobile. We don't know how their technology will respond to ours." Elias nodded, turning to the soldiers. "Remember, this isn't just about fighting back. It's about survival. Stick to the plan, stay sharp, and don't take unnecessary risks. As the group boarded their stealth transport, the ship's engines hummed to life, lifting them off the ground with smooth precision. The sky outside was still dark, but scattered flashes of light from the alien ships illuminated the horizon. Elias stared out the window, his thoughts swirling. He had always known humanity was capable of remarkable things, but this was unlike any war they had ever faced. The stakes had never been higher. The transport slipped silently through the atmosphere, gliding toward a hidden hangar beneath one of the larger alien ships. As they approached, the vast structure loomed like a titan above them, its surface covered in strange markings that shimmered with an eerie light. "Stay sharp," Elias whispered as the team suited up and prepared to disembark. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing the cold, metallic surface of the alien ship's hangar. "We've got 20 minutes before they notice us," Adira said, scanning the area. "Move quickly, find the weak point, and get out." Elias nodded, leading the way as the team moved swiftly through the hangar, their footsteps muffled by the strange, alien material beneath them. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every corner a potential ambush. They were intruders in a foreign world, and though they had the element of surprise, it wouldn't last. As they reached the center of the hangar, a high-pitched hum began to fill the air. Elias froze. "Something's wrong. They've detected us." Before anyone could react, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a series of harsh, blinding lights flashed above them. The alien ship's internal defenses were coming online. "Move!" Elias shouted, and the team sprinted for cover, the sound of blaster fire ricocheting off the walls around them. The quiet of the mission had shattered. Now, they were in the fight of their lives. The walls of the alien ship buzzed with an ominous hum, the blinding lights flickering as the first volley of blaster fire collided with the shields. Elias ducked behind a heavy, metal column, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. A shrill, mechanical screech echoed through the hangar, the alien ship's defense systems fully activated, and the team was caught in the middle of an assault they had no way of preparing for. "Keep moving! Don't stay in one place!" Elias barked, his voice barely audible over the deafening noise. Adira, ahead of him, sprinted toward a nearby doorway, but as her foot struck the ground, an explosion rocked the floor, sending debris scattering across the room. She stumbled, but quickly regained her balance, her eyes wide with determination. "We can't stay here. We need to access their core systems. We're not leaving until we get what we came for." Elias shot back, scanning the room as the enemy forces advanced. Their movements were eerily synchronized, like a single mind directing them. They didn't seem to follow any logical pattern, but instead reacted with an intelligence far beyond that of any human enemy. The sound of footsteps clattering on the metal surface warned them just moments before a group of heavily armed aliens rounded the corner, their sleek armor reflecting the cold light. A volley of plasma rounds struck the walls around Elias, forcing him to roll out of the way. "Fall back!" Volan shouted, his voice hoarse as he returned fire. He fired his weapon with deadly precision, each shot finding its mark. Elias watched the aliens fall one by one, but more poured in from the shadows. "We need cover, or we're done for." Adira shouted as she reloaded, her rifle snapping back into position. Elias gritted his teeth. "We're not retreating. We're not giving them the satisfaction." "Then we need to find a way to stop them," Adira responded, her eyes sharp. "Their shields. We have to disable them before they overwhelm us." The team regrouped behind another pillar, their faces lit by the eerie glow of the enemy weapons. The air smelled of ionized metal, and Elias could taste the bitterness of the smoke from the burning debris around them. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he ignored it, focusing only on the next move. Adira's voice broke through the tension. "There's an access point on the other side. It leads directly to their central control systems. If we can hack it, we might be able to turn their weapons against them." "I'll cover you," Elias said, his hand tightening around his gun. She hesitated. "It's too dangerous, Elias." "We don't have a choice," he said, eyes burning with resolve. "It's the only way we make it out alive." She looked at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a sharp nod, she sprinted toward the access point, her team following closely behind. Elias moved with them, providing cover fire, his aim steady and sure. But every step forward felt like an eternity, each corner they rounded bringing them closer to a battle they couldn't afford to lose. As they reached the access point, the massive metal door ahead of them slid open with a low, grinding sound. The team spilled into the corridor, moving swiftly through the narrow passageway. Behind them, the sounds of alien pursuit grew louder, the rhythm of their steps quickening. They reached a junction in the hallway, and Elias motioned for the group to stop. Adira moved to a control panel, her fingers flying across the interface. The screen flickered and blinked in rapid succession as she tried to gain access to the alien systems. "Elias," she muttered, her face pale, "I can't get past their encryption. It's too complex. We need more time." "They won't give us time," Elias said, his voice tense. "We need to act now." A loud crash echoed from the far end of the corridor. The alien forces had caught up. Elias glanced back at Adira, frustration mounting in his chest. "Can you override it?" he asked. Adira hesitated. "I need." Before she could finish, the first wave of aliens rounded the corner, weapons raised. The team immediately fell into defensive formation, but their position was vulnerable. Elias glanced back at Adira, her hands still poised over the panel. "How much longer?" he demanded. "Almost there," she said, her voice steady despite the urgency. Elias' eyes darted from one side of the corridor to the other. The aliens were closing in, their footfalls echoing like a death march. He raised his weapon, firing several shots down the hallway, but it only slowed them down. Time was slipping away, and each second brought them closer to being overwhelmed. Adira's fingers moved faster, her face locked in concentration. "Done," she shouted. Suddenly, the entire corridor was flooded with a harsh, red light as the ship's internal alarms blared. The air shifted as the ship's energy systems hummed to life, and Elias felt the ground trembled beneath them. The aliens hesitated, confused by the change in the environment, but only for a moment. Then, the walls of the ship seemed to pulse, vibrating in a strange, rhythmic pattern. Adira glanced at the team. "It's working. Their shields are down." "Then let's finish this," Elias muttered, his voice hardening. The team surged forward, their guns blazing, charging into the fray. The sound of gunfire, alien screeches, and shattering metal filled the air. But in that moment, Elias knew they were no longer fighting just to survive. They were fighting for humanity's future. And humanity wasn't going down without a fight. The clang of metal against metal reverberated through the cavernous hangar as Elias and his team fought desperately to keep the advancing alien forces at bay. The once pristine floor of the ship was now scarred with the remnants of battle, blasted walls, smoldering debris, and scattered bodies of the enemy. The air was thick with the stench of burnt ozone and the acrid tang of blood. Sweat dripped down Elias's face, but there was no time for hesitation, no room for doubt. This was it, the final battle. "Adira!" Elias shouted over the roar of weapons fire, his voice strained but resolute. "We need to get to the central core now. This ends here." Adira, her face smeared with soot and her eyes fierce, nodded without a word, already moving toward the glowing, pulsating core of the ship's command center. It was their last chance to stop the alien empire from annihilating humanity. But the path to the core wasn't going to be easy. Not with the relentless waves of alien soldiers closing in on them. The remaining members of the team, Volan, the burly sharpshooter, and Kale, the tech expert, were providing cover fire, each shot deliberate and precise. The aliens had a strange, cold elegance to them, their sleek armor reflecting the dim lights of the ship. They moved with terrifying coordination, as if they shared a single mind, a hive mentality that made them almost impossible to predict. But Elias wasn't intimidated. He took a steady breath, his finger tightening around the trigger. His shots rang out with deadly accuracy, the high-pitched whine of plasma rounds cutting through the air. For a brief moment, he could hear nothing but the sound of his own breath and the hum of his rifle, his focus narrowing to a single point: survival. "Move!" Cale yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. He activated a control panel on the far wall, sending a pulse of energy cascading down the hallway, temporarily disabling the alien weapons. The advantage was fleeting, but it gave them the opening they needed. Elias sprinted toward the access door to the core, the rest of the team in tow. Behind them, the distant thrum of alien ships' engines could be heard, signaling that reinforcements were on the way. Their time was running out. As they reached the entrance to the central core, the door sealed shut with a heavy metallic clang. Volan cursed under his breath, his large frame banging against the door in frustration. "Get us inside, Cale," Elias ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. Cale's fingers moved quickly over the interface. Sweat poured down his face as he muttered to himself, trying to crack the alien encryption. Every second felt like an eternity. The sound of alien footsteps echoed closer, their relentless pursuit sending chills down Elias's spine. "They're coming," Volan said, his rifle aimed at the door. "We don't have much time." Cale's voice was strained. "I need more time. Just keep them off me." Elias didn't hesitate. He turned to face the approaching enemies, taking in the rapidly closing distance. The ship's corridors were now a maze of dark shadows, the flickering lights creating a sense of eerie isolation. The temperature had dropped significantly, the cold seeping into his bones. But there was no room for discomfort. No room for fear. "Here they come!" Adira shouted, firing her weapon with lethal precision. The first wave of aliens burst into the hallway, and the air erupted into chaos. Elias raised his rifle and fired. A clean shot, one of them dropped, but more surged forward, their eyes cold and unwavering. The battle intensified, the walls shaking with each new explosion. Blaster fire streaked through the air, lighting up the dark corridors. Elias ducked behind a pillar, his mind racing. His heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline flooding his veins, but his thoughts remained focused. This wasn't just a fight for survival, this was a stand for humanity, a stand against an empire that believed they could wipe out the human race without consequence. "Cale," he shouted again, barely able to hear his own voice. "Get that door open, now!" Almost there, Cale's voice was strained, his forehead beaded with sweat. "I just need, there." With a final, triumphant beep, the access door slid open, revealing the heart of the ship. Elias wasted no time. He ran through the entrance, the rest of the team following closely behind. The core room was vast, its walls lined with glowing alien technology that hummed with energy. A large control console sat in the center, and at its base, a terminal blinked with life. Adira immediately moved toward it, her hands flying over the alien controls. "This is it," she muttered. "We have to upload the virus. If we can disable their central command, the entire fleet will collapse." Elias glanced back toward the door. The sound of alien soldiers was growing louder, their heavy footsteps echoing ominously down the corridor. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low but steady. "Do it. Now." Adira nodded, her face hard with determination. "I'm in." For a moment, all was silent except for the rapid clicking of her fingers against the console. Elias could feel the tension in the air, the weight of their last chance pressing down on them. Suddenly, the door at the far end of the room slammed open with a deafening roar. The aliens were here. "Get ready!" Volan yelled, raising his weapon. Elias drew a deep breath, his hand tightening around his rifle. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. The final stand was about to begin.